Welcome, adventurers, to another episode of the Traveler Chronicles. I'm your host, Dungeon Master Eguile, and with me is my co-host, D&D Wife.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate all our new and returning listeners. We love you guys and all the support that you give us, and we are appreciative of your interest in our ongoing story.
But yes, as always, Traveler's Chronicles is where we take little snippets of our long-running campaign that we have set in the homebrew world of Extrayus that I run as the Dungeon Master and D&D Wife is a player of. But we kind of know that, you know, obviously we're not Critical Role. We're not going to have you listen to every single snippet of our campaigns. But we like to go over different kind of important scenes and kind of analyze them and look to see kind of different kind of moments that other D&D players might experience too that can kind of share in that. We also have our little kind of on-the-ground reporter done by Luna, which is voiced by D&D Wife, that gives us a little bit of perspective on each of the scenes, a little bit more of a feel that you're actually in Extrayus. And so today what we're looking at is obviously the travelers, if you've been following along, have recently arrived in the holy city of Arnknoka.
Oh, so beautiful.
And as we had on the last one, we kind of recounted of their kind of first arrival and seeing kind of the design of the rings that surround the Eternal Rock and kind of getting the idea of what it looks like in a more grand scale. But today we wanted to look more now into kind of the more social aspect of it, because as with most campaigns, most stories, it's always kind of an interesting point of when the players get that opportunity to truly mix with the people of a certain civilization, right? You know, mostly like you go to taverns, okay, it's tavern people. You go to, you know, or you're at like the outskirts, it's bandits and hoodlums and farm people and down to earth, right? But when you get to the first major hub, that's always kind of that first of like, okay, the players get an opportunity to see exactly how the cultures intermingle, how do they respond to each other, and the DM gets that opportunity to kind of show exactly what are the social structures without just going, okay, this is how this works, you know, just doing kind of just broad exposition. Instead, it allows them to kind of more organically discover that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I remember when we first came into the city in the story, it was just really awe-inspiring because it was just like a throng of people that we were looking at. So we didn't really think about the way that they were organized within that camp. It was just like, oh, well, you know, everybody's here, everybody's mingling. It looks like people are smiling, everybody's having fun.
Yeah, and I think it also was like, because obviously we had, as we had discussed earlier, there was other places where they had arrived and kind of seen certain dynamics. But I kind of liken this to like, it's always that kind of where you kind of see everyone put on a fake face for events and parties and stuff like that. So this is that kind of same experience where when they were first arriving, it's kind of grungy. The people aren't really talking to each other. They're kind of getting treated, well, certain players were getting treated kind of with, you know, disdain. Poor Tobias. But it also was kind of showing more of the true face. But then now that they've arrived at the festival, it's now all of a sudden like, wait, everyone was an asshole before. Why is now everyone like peace, love, and rock and roll?
Yeah, why is it so nice now?
Right. So it is that opportunity where it's like, okay, well, maybe now it's like, well, is this the real? And you put that kind of dichotomy between the players of, well, what really is the truth? And so I feel like as a DM, when you do that, it almost instinctively encourages them to start digging.
Oh, yeah. Because I think at first we just thought that it was that they were so gruff with us because they didn't know us. We were just strangers. So we just assumed it was like, oh, well, they don't know us. Why would they treat us, you know, with any sort of like deference? Yeah.
And then I think it was also, too, it's kind of like, you know, when you arrive over that valley and you kind of see a location, it does kind of have that desert oasis. It looks really good. You can see because you're really getting kind of just that pulled out perspective. But then once they started kind of getting closer and making their way into the area, they really started starting to see kind of that social aspect. And even though there's this like fake mask, it still is going to show itself, you know, and represent itself, because no matter what, like people's true feelings and emotions are always going to come to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only so long you can hide those things for, you know?
Right. And so as we talked in the last episode of the Traveler's Chronicle, they had kind of wandered directly in a straight line. Because as we were speaking, like Arnknoka kind of has this like cross section that just goes through, like essentially two roads that form a cross that have the stone in the middle. So when the players got there, they kind of just went in a straight line. So they really didn't kind of see anything of the point of the story. They had really just gone to the stone, was like, oh, this is cool. Almost like lemmings, they kind of walked until they hit something that they couldn't walk through. And
well, we didn't know. It was our first time,
Yeah, right. So that's why in this next scene, it was really kind of interesting because it was when they started to scatter out.
Yeah.
And it was the first time they understood that there was kind of two kind of separate areas to Arnknoka, where it was first the inner ring, which was this kind of almost like court of lavishness, right? Like there's just decked to the nines, the tents are extravagant. And
silks everywhere,
right? And food, and there seems to be a lot of merchants, and there's also a lot of guards and all this kind of stuff. And it's because it's closest to the stone. And then they learn of the outer ring. Yeah. Now this is more of like what I consider like campgrounds. It's like you have this space, set up whatever you want.
Right.
However,
so like the cabins are on the inner ring, but then just like the basic campgrounds on the outside.
You can see that it's obviously less protected, and this was really the first kind of breakdown where the players discovered that there was kind of this separation between the Mirren of a lesser and greater categorization.
And that's the first time we also like heard the term lesser and greater Mirren. We hadn't really thought of it until that point.
Yeah, and in that point, it was more also the way that it was revealed too, because it wasn't like the bigger ones were calling themselves greater. It's actually the nomenclature for the smaller ones, as being kind of almost like they self-identify as lesser
Mirren,
And obviously, as they learned, as they kind of walked around, and like I say, as players get to kind of go around and discover things, they started kind of seeing, okay, here's kind of a trend as to what constituted a lesser Mirren, with it being kind of much more of the diminutive, the less violent, less physically capable Mirren, and kind of became more of that. The separation became more based on like primal kind of strength-based kind of rules, with the Minotaur and the Elefolk and the Hawk folk, excuse me. Gotta watch out for Watsy. But all of them having these unique capabilities, these unique strengths, they constitute obviously a greater, force. Thus greater Mirren.
Well, like for example, like the Hawk folk, they're looked upon highly because they can fly. So they have this really powerful, important thing that they can do. Whereas some of the ground established bird folk who couldn't fly, were looked as lesser because they couldn't.
Yeah. And so, a lot of it was also too of like so much history that was also in the background, right? At this point in the story, which was really great because now there's so much history, but obviously we're talking almost a year and a half at this point in the current time.
Gameplay,
right? So, back then there was so little history knowledge that was actually in the world at that point for you guys to discover. So it was this idea of like there was no knowledge of exactly what had happened, right?
Yeah.
Eventually they pieced together and learned about the, the traitorous Mirren and Scalekin and kind of understanding why it was like a free picking party on Tobias.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice because I think that was truly when the party realized that it wasn't like directly Tobias. It wasn't like, and mind you, not the black lion folk. So it wasn't like, okay, we're not doing that kind of thing.
No.
But it was kind of where it was like, oh, okay, this goes much deeper and much bigger.
Because it's all the lion folk that have been shunned.
Right. And so then it was like, okay, this is something where, as a DM, it was like, you guys were assuming the worst, but it's still bad, but it's not that kind of bad.
Right. No.
But so it made it kind of this more connection again, where my plan always as a DM is like, it's not about forcing, but just kind of, I say it bad, it sounds terrible, but tricking them into kind of instinctually wanting to learn more based on just like little breadcrumbs of essentially what I call like hate stuff. Not like hate as in like hate, but like stuff that I know that is going to make their characters upset or angry. Right?
Or curious to see why.
A particular NPC has a particular personality that I know will just irk one of the players. If I do that, I know they might engage with that player more. They might interact with that character
Try to find out why they're so ornery.
Versus, it's why like we have a running joke where if the NPC is named Jerry... you guys pretty know that it's a freebie to do
Jerry.
just about whatever you want to do to that NPC. He's just going to be a kicking post
They done messed up.
and should not be trusted.
If it's Jerry, he messed up.
So there's those little things where like these little tricks that I try to use when going through the campaign to try to encourage that like natural exploration, that natural knowledge, while also not giving away the whole thing, because that's the other catch, right? If you make them too interested, now they're going to be focused on stuff that doesn't matter,
Right.
and then they're going to be taking their time to do that.
Yeah, the hyper focus can really sort of derail the way that story's going.
And so, and the whole thing too, that, as it really kind of, causes a problem, which is, it's just the lack of history, which it hasn't really been revealed yet in the campaign, but obviously with the Mirren being a oral tradition kind of culture, stuff gets lost in translation. And so there's so much more depth to the tournament, to the festival, that has long now been kind of washed away due to lack of just sharing knowledge.
Yeah, they haven't really interacted.
Right? Like the battles that they are 3-on-3. We know now that has a much greater significance overall to the story than it did at the current point. And so that's kind of that interesting point where you put those little things out, they become such a nuanced thing. And then when you actually finally learn about it, it becomes so much more impactful.
Oh, yeah, there's these little like nuggets of flavor that are time released because we'll only find out later what they mean now.
Yeah, and so, as naturally as they explore and they start discovering, they kind of start pushing the limits, which is always that thing to have, right?
Yeah.
So, they start, as the players naturally see, there's this kind of separation, then it's like, okay, well, let's go see the other side.
Right.
And we got, really interesting interactions, whether it was, with merchants or with the other kind of established hierarchy, there was a lot of kind of, headbutting with the Elefolk and all that kind of stuff in the beginning. But really the scene that we really wanted to focus on was really the discovery of the tournament and kind of the opening misconceptions that the players were having with that to what actually occurred in the scene itself. As well as kind of looking at a little bit of the background that they didn't know.
True.
Because as always to my players, these have a little bit of spoilers, so it's always kind of to be weary of what you could hear. But really, what it was, why it was so important was it was kind of that first opening of, okay, here's what the DM wants us to do. And it was kind of funny because it was a situation where a few of you wanted nothing to do with it. And so it's like that whole thing where you set up something, which is why this kind of was kind of poignant to me, because it was like, oh no, what if they don't even sign up?
Right.
Like, had I not done enough work to make you irritated or inquisitive enough to join into this tournament to where, and I'm going to say this, originally it was to where like you could die. Yeah. But I was like, okay, the only way I'm going to really make sure they want to do it's like, okay, no one can die. The point is not to die, because I was like, if I don't say that, then I wasn't quite sure if enough of you, because I needed everyone to join. I didn't want anybody to be separate. Right. I needed it was 3 and there's 6 of you. Yeah.
It just needed to be in 2 separate groups.
Kind of needed it, I'm not trying to railroad, but it was technically like our introduction.
It was kind of meant to be, yeah.
Right? So it was one of those things where it's like, okay, you got to make these kind of transitions on the fly, and you have to do it. And that's why why I really thought this scene stuck out, because this was more on the side of the DM in terms of why it was a more important scene. It wasn't as impactful, I think, for the players, but for me, it was more of, okay, am I going to be able to lead these people with their characters? Do their characters follow enough of a kind of consensus to where they're not all shooting off into other directions?
You're kind of setting the ground for what it's going to be like later.
Yeah, and so, it really, it's a really important thing for, I think, me in this context, as we've been looking at most of these being like player impacts. But really kind of shows, and as we get more into the scene later, I think that'll kind of be more kind of visible. But as always, we always like to do a little bit of something different, and we feel what's not better than to get a bird's eye view, an actual down on the ground from our reporter Luna.
Absolutely.
So hopefully she's out there. I think she's kind of wandering around looking to see if she can talk to any merchants.
Yeah, let's find out what she's up to. Luna, take it away. Welcome to Traveler Tidings with Luna. I'm Luna here on the ground at the Arnknoka festival preparations, and I must say it is a bustling crowd of activity here. I'm looking to see if I can talk to a few people and sort of find out what their vibe is for the upcoming festival. Let's see. Ooh, sir, may I speak with you, sir? Elder Mavar, is it? Yes, may I talk to you for a moment?
Yes, what can I do for you?
I'm just here trying to gain some perspective. What is the significance of this festival? What does it hold for the Elefolk?
This is a festival. It's a time of reflection and celebration, a testament to the enduring legacy and wisdom of the Elefolk.
Oh, my.
It also is just a reminder of our responsibilities we bear as the leaders of the Mirren tribe.
Oh, I see. So the Elefolk are the leaders. Do you have any other leaders as part of your group?
Well, we tend to lead alone.
Oh, I see. Heavy is the crown as it is.
Quite right, but I must go.
Oh, yes, matters to take care of, absolutely. Thank you for joining me. I guess he had to move on fairly quickly, but let's see if there's anyone else we can speak to. Oh, miss, may I have a word? Artisan Kilara, your work is truly magnificent. Can you share what this festival means to you?
Well, the festival is really a vibrant display of our culture and creativity.
Oh, wow.
It brings together the best of our traditions and showcases the unity we strived for, despite our differences.
Oh, wow, that is phenomenal. I'd love to hear about that. And are there any special events you're looking forwards to?
Oh, there's a showcase that I'm hoping to maybe win a ribbon for, and also rooting for my friends as well. Hoping to see all sorts of materials being used.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing, hopefully, you up there with the blue ribbon.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I see somebody else moving among the crowd. I will leave you, mistress. Thank you so much for showing me your work. Warrior Thrak, please, may I have a word? Please.
Yes, little lady?
Hi, yes. The tournament is the highlight of the festival here, so I've heard. What are your thoughts as you prepare to compete?
Well, I'd say it's a big honor to compete in it, and it's always something we always strive in my tribe to be here and take on the challenges.
Ooh. Is there anyone in particular you're looking forward to taking on?
I'm gonna beat the ever-living hell out of those dirty elephants.
Oh, my. So you have a little bit of a rivalry, so to speak, is it?
Oh, yeah, I just want to snap them in half.
Oh, dear. Well, I certainly look forward to what is certain to be a bloodbath in the ring. Thank you so much for joining me, Warrior Thrak. I will let you be on your way. All right. Well, on that note, let's see who else we can speak to here. Oh, sir, do you have a moment?
Oh, what can I do for you, little lady?
Oh, well, yes. First, may I have your name?
The name is Lincoln. What can I do?
Well, good to meet you, Lincoln. I'm just here getting a little bit of perspective on what the goers of the festival sort of think about it. What does the festival mean to you?
An opportunity to sell to finally get something, as these pathetic people tend not to sell to people like me.
Oh, is there something that your family perhaps did, or is it all Leo folk?
Oh, well, not my people per se, as there are a few differences between the Leo folk. We don't all seem to have the same stigma, but still have some lingering effects.
Oh, I see. So it just depends on, I suppose, the type of Leo folk that you are.
Well, I tend to come from a more merchant class. I sell everything, but unfortunately when nobody buys, I cannot sell.
Oh, that's quite understandable. Well, I really hope you find some good business while you're here.
Well, I'm hoping to find a friend, we have to stay together.
Oh, yes, of course. I hope you find your friend. Have good luck and a good time at the festival.
Oh, yes. Come on, you.
Oh. Well, I don't know who that was, but... Eesh. Okay. Well, this was Luna with Traveler Tidings signing off. Back to you, DM Eguile and D&D Wife.
Well, thank you, Luna, for that interesting set of characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure that kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse of kind of the social statuses that kind of mix around.
A variety
people,
of different perspectives, for sure.
But really what we really came here to do is obviously looking at the scene that, like I said, was really the most important when it came to me as a dungeon master.
Yeah.
And really what it was as the party, you know, there's always like something, right? Like when it comes to like starting a campaign to give like the feelers for battle. It's either go kill some wolves, kill some goblins. Oh, there's a tournament of test of strength, a festival games that kind of let people know kind of where they are. Yeah. And so I really wanted to have that, but give it kind of that better spin. So when they were first introduced, you know, it was this kind of like, oh, okay, let's go see it. And it was this kind of idea because in the first combat, it was 6 of them versus 6 kobolds, right? So that unusual sense of confidence, because it's like, yeah, well, the turn economy is pretty even. It's all 6 of you, and they're kobolds,
right?
But obviously, when they are told, okay, yeah, you can join, you know, it's not a, you know, because there was a half thought of, oh, they're not going to let us in. We're not Mirren.
Yeah, we're not part of this. So
it was like, okay, well, good job, good luck, Tobias. Go find some friends, and we'll watch you. I kind of had, you know, it was
perhaps
one of those
with
things,
Lincoln.
right? Yeah, it was interesting. But when they discovered it was okay, and it was funny because so then they just kind of had to do the whole like decision of like, okay, first, who's going to actually do it?
Yeah.
And I think it was like 4 of you wanted to do it. It was, I think, you and Tobias did not, Luna and Tobias were not really settled in on the idea.
No, well, Luna is not the most physically, you know, giant person, so she would get mollywopped.
As I remembered as it was, is as Luna kept repeating, I'm on vacation.
Yeah, she wasn't there to fight. She was there to eat food, enjoy the music.
So I mean, I think that makes for pretty, you know, it made for an interesting dichotomy because now it was, okay, 3. And at that point in the story, there's only one healer, like one actual healer in the story. So it was always it was like, okay, well, who gets Tobias? Like, who gets the cleric?
Yep.
And so there was a little bit of discussions of like, okay, what are these teams? And I like it too because it really kind of started this, what will become later, this kind of making sure to mix the teams around. So it's not just the Bogbean and Bricky show, right? It's not just, oh, those 2 always get into shenanigans. No, let's mix it around because you never know what ends up happening. And we learned some of the other tag teams and combos make for some pretty like hilarious and
They're
like
fun.
also great events.
Oh, yeah.
So really trying to like, you know, that's why I was trying to make sure it's like, okay, this is kind of the theme. Let's not just get used to 6 on, you know, everyone battles.
Yeah.
You might break it up. And
this was completely different.
Right. And the big thing too was the introspective of where, as I was setting this up, you guys are going, oh, it's because he doesn't want us to gang up on his people. It's easier to do 3. But there was so much more history behind it.
Yeah, there was actually a reason.
Right. Whereas the original creators originally implied for it to be 3 of all the different Mirrens, right? It wasn't meant to be a show of okay,
same.
all the Minotaur, all the Leo folk, all the Ella folk. It was supposed to be, hey, this is the time you come, you fight together, because when you fight together, you learn, you share experiences, techniques. But of course, as naturally as just because they're, you know, a tribal society doesn't mean they don't have those same stigmas and just automatically start siding with physicality.
Or sometimes you just feel comfortable with, you know, your own people.
And so it got turned into this other thing. And so when the, you know, the travelers created their teams and then the other people in the, you know, in the tournament are like, wait, you're all mixed, like this, you know, you're getting laughed at that whole point. But I think the big thing too that I really liked about this in the scene for me as a DM is this is also the reveal of the fact that there was a potential that that the 2 would actually meet each other in battle. So because there was 2 of them, which is what I wanted, the rolls or the picks for the bracketing could have seen you guys, which I really wanted to happen. No joke.
Yeah.
As like a little like you know, analyze,
see who knocks each other out first.
Little DM's commentary. Yeah, I kind of wanted to see so that you could kind of see each other's powers and abilities against each other. And obviously, when the players fight each other, it's a different kind of battle altogether.
Yeah, like a little mini
I'm
battle
hoping
royale.
we'll get one of those down the road.
Yeah.
You know, I think a few of you guys have a potential to maybe go to the other team and go after the party. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I'm down.
But really, that I thought was kind of an idea of showing a bunch more nuance to the players, with them not really knowing, because we just started, right?
Right.
But it became that whole thing where, like, as the story progresses and as we'll talk more, where it starts to be like, it all starts to harken back. It starts to be like, oh, wait, okay, that's why. Oh, this is significant. This is significant. And it also, what I always love it is because you start finding out and you get those moments, you're like, oh man, if I would have known that, what would have happened in that same scenario?
Right.
What would have changed if that little bit of knowledge? Because to me is the way, as a dungeon master, that I'm doing it right. Because the unfortunate way with, like, players who play a lot of the same campaign books, and this is why I push for homebrew, right? Because it gets to the point where it's not, well, what would I have done? It's like, oh, I've already done that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a longtime player and you've played Curse of Strahd 6 times, you know, at that certain point, you're playing a story, you're like, well, I already did that.
Yeah.
I know what happens. I already did that. I already did that. I already did that. So it's better in this homebrew world, and why I like dungeon mastering as a homebrew now, because there's never going to be a moment like that.
Yeah.
It's always going to be these ahas,
different new moments
that are natural, not someone just, you know, hamming it up to make it seem like they didn't know what was going on. And so that was always kind of a big deal for me when it comes to, you know, setting things up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, really the big thing too was it was kind of also showing, which was an important thing for me to do, was this idea of, even though you're going to be in a place where obviously you were told, oh, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. I really wanted to also stress that you're never really safe.
You're right.
That,
Not
you know,
ever.
Kind of that idea where it's like, yeah, as a dungeon master, I'm going to tell you, oh, nobody can kill here. Okay,
Sure.
yeah, but nobody can kill in our world, but people, you know, do it
People
anyway,
do,
right?
yeah.
You know, so it's that thing where it also gets into that lull, and it was testing, and a lot of the early Arnknoka stuff with you guys as players were kind of testing situations to see kind of how you guys would react to certain things.
Yeah, well, the way we refer to it is kind of like the tutorial for the rest of the campaign. It was really teaching us, as well as giving us a perspective on what we're working with too.
Yeah. And the biggest thing too, and that's also kind of the experiment we are doing with Extrayus, is that my players shape the world too. It's not that they're necessarily like running in a storybook world. They can make changes, especially for some of them, like right this moment, because they represent people and the cultures. They're the ones that actually are bringing the culture. So like with Tobias, we've talked about, he represents the Leon or the Leo folk. So that way he, as a player, gets to make certain decisions as to what is revealed or what is, you know, expressed
and
as
what is part of the Leo folk culture.
You know, for example, the accent, right? So that's just one of those things where as the other players get to play and introduce and get more in their stories, they're going to have those opportunities to kind of change the world, change what kind of gets built. You know, what becomes something that I might have written as being something small and innocuous becomes so much more fleshed out because one of the players happens to take interest in it.
Right. It can become such a beautiful part that you weren't really expecting for the story. It's like, I really like that.
Right. And obviously, I talk a lot of this being an important moment for me as a dungeon master, but obviously as for you, being a player, this obviously kind of changes. And, you know, if you want to give a little of your perspective of that whole event.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting because it provided just a bunch of information for us to take in, as well as a bunch of opportunities for us to kind of role play with different NPCs and just kind of hang out and see what was going on and get a vibe. So like I remember we got hit pretty hard with the we're outsiders thing when we went to go get supplies specifically, and we did not have V with us because V looks like a Mirren, so he was kind of sort of accepted by them. Whereas obviously Tobias is shunned, so he gets like the bad end of the stick, and the rest of us are all outsiders that aren't clearly not Mirren. So we also kind of get a little bit of that too. So I remember we went to a merchant who charged us like 30 gold for basic supplies, right? And V was able to get it for like 5. And it was just such a revelation about. Definitely, it might not be spoken, but there are these certain hierarchies that exist within Arnknoka and within the people of the Mirren continent that we had to start being aware of, because you might accidentally upset someone or insult someone with the way that you're speaking or the way you act towards them. And we definitely didn't want to get kicked out of the festival on our first day.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like that funny over the shoulder kind of moments where it was like, okay, if we mess up real bad, are we going to get thrown out?
Yeah, is this going to be a bouncer situation?
I mean, but like obviously as I was saying, like you were one of the players that was trying to opt out of the tournament.
Yeah,
I mean, what was the particular reason why you were trying to like not be a part of that?
Well,
I'm
first
curious.
and foremost, Luna was on vacation. Okay, so she wasn't trying to do any of that. Besides that fact, she does magic. She's not really a physical person. So to enter a contest of physical strength just didn't seem appropriate to her because she's not very physical. But obviously being in the teams really kind of made it a little easier to have my physical inadequacies fixed and sort of bridged by others who had more physical traits, and I could just kind of back up with my magic.
Right. And then like obviously as we go more into the tournament, as it was a multi-day tournament, I think it also was interesting to see kind of the players picking like the dodgeball team, trying to figure out, because I think there was also like a little bit of back thought of like, okay, whoever gets Tobias is probably, by sake of how we've learned, going to get the harder fights. Is going to get the most aggression in every combat.
The second team got kind of the shaft in this because the first team got not just Tobias but Bogbean as well. So they had two people who were pretty big and pretty physically fit and able to take a few hits.
Low level characters.
Meanwhile, the second group had myself, V, who is supposed to be a fast and kind of lithe character, so he's not really known for his feats of strength. And then we had the tiny little Drexla flying around trying to see what her place in the map was.
I mean, you say that, but as we get on, I mean, the parties were a little more successful than I thought.
It went better than I thought.
Yeah, right, as we get more into it.
I will say.
But really, as I wanted to look at this scene, it's kind of that unique because not a lot happened necessarily for the characters yet. Like, it wasn't one of those ones I think the players were writing in their journal all intently and talking about everything. But to me, as the Dungeon Master, it was really that first sign of like, how are the players going to interact in a group setting? Do I have a bunch of murder hobos that are just going to steal? It's just constantly, I sleight of hand this, I sleight of hand that, I rob this person, I lie to this person, I trick this guy. So it really was that kind of that first kind of looking of, okay, here's what it's going to be. Here's how they play. They're working together and they're kind of doing it where they want to learn and they want to play. And just by throwing out the breadcrumbs, I was able to kind of start seeing, okay, here's what works best.
Yeah, it gives you an idea of where to go in terms of not just story, but gameplay too.
Right. And as always, it's kind of nice because we do focus on that little bit of, immersion, which is why we always go to Luna for our, on the ground reporting. So you can kind of hear a little bit of what it's like to be an Extrayus too.
We were able to speak to quite a few of the Mirrens, couple of with also different occupations, different things that they did within not just Arnknoka but their tribe. So that was lovely.
And it's also good because a lot of times for my players, this is sometimes a little hidden gems they get to kind of pick up on that they might not have gotten in the first time they went around.
Absolutely.
But that's why I really wanted to look at this scene, even though like I said, it wasn't the most exciting scene, but it was to me one of the most important scenes because of the fact of, I think it really showed that the party, the players, the characters were all going to gel and work together. Yeah. Because this was really, like we said, a year and a half ago. So obviously we're doing something right because everyone keeps coming back. And we just recently had our 24th session, which was a 12-hour one.
That was fun.
So we're definitely getting our game time in. But obviously, always thank everyone who comes. And if you ever have any questions or any kind of things, whether it's about Extrayus, the campaign, the Travelers, or just for me as a Dungeon Master, if you're trying to get started, always go to our Discord, hit us up. You can always ask us there. There's usually, if not me, many of the Travelers are on there 24/7.
Some of us are always on.
You can catch many streams, whether it's gaming or art from Etling.
Yep.
But definitely look us up, join us. Everyone is welcome. And we're still running our 100 subscribers contest.
Absolutely. So make sure.
We're at 51. So obviously we're about halfway there. But as soon as we hit the 100 is when we lock it out. So if you're not part of that, then you miss out.
Yep. And make sure to follow the instructions so that you enter properly.
Right. But don't forget to go out there also on YouTube. Make sure to like, share, and review our podcast on all your preferred platforms.
Thank you so much.
Encourage also, please subscribe to our Discord as well as our YouTube at Couple of Nerds Productions.
It really helps.
But also coming up soon, as we've been talking about it, we're about to be going to SAC Anime.
Yay.
And obviously a big update for us is that we are going to get our own private photos with Laura Bailey and Travis Willingham.
Oh, yes. So that is something to look forward to, guys. So keep in touch and we will let you know.
But as always, thank you for joining us on this adventure.
Thank you.
And may your adventures go as smooth as ours, which means
Absolutely.
not at all.
Have a good night.